Right, so let's look at a kind of a census for the motor park. By motor park, I mean the total car park, the total car population, the vehicle population of the UK. And this relates to data from 2024 through the SMMT Motorparc data compilation. So we'll go through this. I'll give you a headline right now. There are 42 million vehicles on UK's roads. 42 million. That's actually nearly 2/3 of the entire population of the UK. The number of cars in use reached new highs last year, growing by 1.3% to 470 the number of growth, I should say. 1.3 represented a growth of 470,556 units, taking the total cars in use, so remember I said vehicles in use 42 million, cars in use 36 million, so precisely 36,165,401. And this marks the third consecutive year of growth and the second biggest volume gain since 2016. This increase reflects the growth in the new car market, because that's obviously recovering since COVID. I mean, COVID happened, it died, and then every year it's been gradually recovering. So 2024 saw a pretty good almost return to sort of normal levels. We saw 1.953 million new cars registered in 2024, and battery electric vehicles, or EVs, electric cars, they made up 19.6% of the market, which is something that we've discussed before, because we've discussed that when we've talked about the ZEV mandate. It was supposed to be 22%, but we hit 19.6%. So we were short of the target, but probably better than some people expected. So those are the numbers that we hit last year, but what cars are we actually driving? Are we all really zooming into an electric future, or are we clinging on to those ICE vehicles like they're going out of fashion, which maybe they are, but I tell you what, today with this video, with this data, in fact, let's take a look under the bonnet of British motoring and what's the cars and the drivers and what's happening out on our roads. How old are these cars, the fuel that we're putting in them or not, the colors of the cars that we're driving, plus the countries where our favorite cars tend to come from. All of that we'll go through, and then at the end of the video we'll also try and do a little bit of an analysis about what this all means about in terms of what it means for us today, in terms of the cars we're driving and the cars we're buying, but also we'll sort of project forward a little bit and see what this means for us going forward, and we'll do all of that right after this.
A brown car guy.
Right, so as I was saying, just to recap, here's a slide to show you 41,964,268 cars formed part of the total vehicle car park, or the motor park. 2024 data, as it says in this SMMT slide. Of that, just over 600,000 were trucks, just over 71,000 were buses, vans were about 5.1 million, and as I've mentioned, cars constituted 2 million of those. We're moving on to let's look at the age of the cars that were on our roads, and for that you can see that they're not getting any younger, are they? In fact, the average age of a car on UK roads is now 9.5 years old, and over 43% of cars are more than a decade old. That means over half of the cars out on our roads were bought before Brexit happened, before TikTok even existed, and when Barack Obama was still president of the US and we still had David Cameron here as Prime Minister. If you look at the fleet that's on the roads at the moment, 31.7% are more than 12 years old. So nearly a third of cars on the road. 18.5% are 10 to 12, 19, that's nearly 20%, or nearly a fifth, are 7 to 9 years old, and then 15% are 3 to 6 years old, and then 15% again are the newer cars, which are less than 3 years old. So what do you think is happening? Why is this happening? Well, you know, new cars are expensive. They've just gotten more and more and more expensive. Remember, when you, in your head, you probably still think, you know, a Fiesta type of car or a Corsa, for example, should be about 17,000 pounds, and you go and look them up and they're about 25,000 plus starting. So that's like how much cars have increased. So they are getting more expensive. And also the other aspect of it is that they're also more complex. There's more systems, there's more tech, there's more technology on them, which, you know, for a lot of people is a good thing. And you think, well, you know, that can't be a bad thing, surely. But if you look at the the driver population, and this is data that's not from this particular data, but this I found on Statista. And if you look at the highest age group in the UK that actually drives, it's the 50-59-year-olds. So 50 to 59-year-olds, as much as 85% of them are driving, and the higher age groups tend to constitute more of the average of drivers out on the road. So you do have older drivers in this country. For them, a lot of this technology and a lot of the features that are in the latest cars are just a little bit too much, and then they're more comfortable with stuff that they know. So I think that's one reason. And then of course the final reason is that with older cars, which is no bad reason really, is, well, if it's still running, then why not keep it running? If there's nothing wrong with it. And don't forget that cars in the last couple of decades, since 20 years ago, 25 years ago, they are better built, better engineered, and just better than they've ever been before. So hence they're also longer lasting. I know a lot of people will dispute that because they say, well, they don't build them like they used to, but just in terms of engineering, they're designed to be better. So if there's nothing wrong with them, why not keep using them? No reason not to. Right, let's look now at what fuel we are using. So what is actually fueling our cars? And here you can see a slide on that. And from this slide you can see that, well, there's 1.3 million, or to be precise, 1,334,246 electric cars on our roads now. So we've actually now crossed well over 1 million electric cars, and that's up 38.9%. And it's actually the fastest growing sector of our total motor population. However, overall, that still only makes up 3.7% of all of the cars in use. And so that, if you think about it in terms of, that's 1 in 27 cars out there is actually electric. So what's still dominating? Well, conventionally fueled cars, they remain the most dominant powertrains. Petrol powered cars are still rising. They're still increasing. They rose by 1% to 21 million and kept an almost unchanged market share of 58.2%. Diesel, of course, is the one that's in constant decline and is continuing to decline. It fell another 4.4% in 2024, down to 11.6 million, making up 32%, just over 32% of the total vehicles in use. And it actually marked the fifth year of decline, the fifth straight year of decline for diesel sales. So diesel is definitely the way out, even though diesel engines themselves are now better than they've ever been. It's skewed slightly, well, actually not slightly, but significantly different when it comes to commercial vehicles, i.e. vans, where 95.3% are still diesel. Electric vans, not really liked at the moment. I mean, they're starting to gain traction, so to speak, but they're still only at 1.6%. What about hybrids? Well, hybrids, you're looking at a 34.6% increase in plug-in vehicles, that is plug-in hybrids, and they account for 1 in 20 vehicles on the market. That's 5.1%. That's about 2.15 million vehicles in use. Clearly, there's still concerns. Like I said, the age of the drivers. There's also concerns over EVs. There's concerns over the infrastructure. When you think about it, outside of the major cities, that's still a bit of a problem. But having said that, when you look at the impact of modern, cleaner vehicles, so the proliferation of newer, lower emission and zero emission vehicle technologies out there on the roads, that has led to a reduction in average car CO2 generated. It's dropped by 1.6%, and this was fueled by a significant fall in company car emissions, which was down 5.6%. That's just the company car emissions, obviously because there's a big incentive to go electric and to go for the plug-in hybrids and stuff like that. Private CO2 emissions, actually private car CO2 emissions, I should say, not private emissions, but private car CO2 emissions also dipped by minus 1%. And again, that's because a lot of people are switching to hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and some also to electric as well. Right, so let's move on to which are the cars that are actually still out there that dominate the 40 plus million cars that are on the road. It's no surprise to see that Ford is still out there. I mean, obviously in the past years, Ford was consistently on top of the sales charts with cars like the Fiesta and the Focus. That's obviously now changed because Fiesta is dead, Focus is on run out. So I think going forward, I think Ford is going to slip off those charts quite quickly, but certainly the existing car park, they still dominate. And as you can see, the Ford Fiesta is the most common Taycan car out there, 1.4 million. Then you got the Vauxhall Corsa, 1 million. You got the Ford Focus, another Ford again at 1 million. Close on its heels is the Volkswagen Golf. Then you got the VW Polo. Then you got the Nissan Qashqai, the Mini. Mini is extremely popular. It's out there. Vauxhall Astra, Toyota Yaris. There's the first. Nissan Qashqai is the first Japanese car, and then Toyota Yaris is on number 9, and then you've got Audi at number 10. In terms of vans, if we just want to have a quick look at those, although we don't normally cover vans, but just having a quick look at that, and then you can see that actually again Ford still dominates, and then you've got the Ford Transit, Ford Transit Custom, Ford Transit, then Volkswagen Transporter, then you've got the Vauxhall Vivaro, Mercedes Sprinter, and so on. But yeah, Ford still dominates that segment, and I think that in terms of commercial vehicles, they probably will continue to do so for a while. Let's look at segments, and in segments, as we've seen with the Fiesta and the Focus and these cars, hatchback city cars, they still tend to dominate. So super minis, lower medium cars, still make up most of the cars. In fact, they make up about 60% of cars on the road. Super minis remain the most popular car type in use, closely followed by the lower medium models, and these segments account for almost 3 out of 5 cars. It's 59.2% of all the cars on the road, making up 11.9 million, so nearly 12 million, and 9.5 million units respectively. You can see that dual-purpose SUVs, they're close on the heels with 6.2 million pretty much there. So that's a pretty massive segment as well. That's probably the most growing segment. But yeah, so that's a quick look at that. But at 11 million for super minis, they're way out there. The smallest segment, surprisingly, Mini at 850,000, and then luxury saloon, which again is not really a surprise because who can afford a luxury saloon? They're mostly company cars anyway. Right, so next up we'll look at color. What are the colors that we're driving? What are the colors that we most see on our roads? But we'll do that right after this. Hey, before I carry on, make sure that you have hit like, and don't forget to share and subscribe. By the way, help out my channel by supporting me on Patreon and Ko-fi, or by taking out a subscription right here on YouTube, or better still, buy my books. I've got 3 of them out now. There's 2 of them. Those are fiction. One is a novel. It's the novel that every petrol head should read. It's called The Ulysses Files. It's about the war on motorists. And the other one is a collection of my short stories from over 2 decades, everything from science fiction to cars to the state of humanity. And then this is my latest book. This is basically me putting my 35 years of experience and knowledge doing what I do into a book to help other people get into this game. So if you've ever thought about being a content creator, a journalist, or an influencer to do with cars, you need to get this book. It's out now on Amazon. So as I said, let's talk color, or rather let's talk about the lack of color, because it's mostly grayscale out on our roads, sadly, isn't it? This is something that I've long said, and I've often championed the fact that we should be going back to the wonderful variety of colors that used to be out there in the 50s and the 60s. A lot of pastels, a lot of different colors, from yellows and pinks and blues and greens and all the rest of it. But unfortunately, we tend to stick with very dull colors. This is not the video to go into all of that, but there's a whole psychology about why that might be, and what it says about a nation and the nation's drivers when we tend to choose these very conservative, dull, dour colors rather than bright, exciting, vivid colors instead. So clearly on the roads today, which could be obvious to anybody that just glances out their window, black is the most popular color, followed by gray, blue, white. Black is 7.3 million, gray is 6.5 million, blue is 5.9 million. We've got white at 5.7 million. We have to go down to number 6 to get red, which is 3.7 million. So that's the most popular of sort of the vibrant colors, if you like. But then it really drops down from red at 3.7 million to the next one at number 7, which is green, which is 660,000. Orange is only 284. Brown, come on, brown is profound, as I always say. Come on, that's 200,000 only, and yellow is only 200,000. So yes, it's a bit of a shame, but we do need more colors out there. A shout out to 24,863 pink cars out there. Well done, you guys. So where do most of our cars come from? From which country are the cars that we like the most? Can you guess? Actually, I think it's a pretty easy guess, in fact, if you think about it. And the answer is Germany. So yeah, Germany with 10.6 million of the total cars on our roads. That's, we're looking at almost a quarter of the fleet. come from Germany. It's as simple as that. The next highest one is, of course, right here, homegrown, the vehicles that are made here. I know we don't own a car industry as such, but we do have a car industry, and that's 5.2 million, but that's significant. 5.2 million versus 10 million from Germany. That's where most of our cars are coming from. Then followed by Spain. Spain is at 3.7 million. You got France at 2.4 million, I would say, and then Japan. And Japan is at 2.2 million. After that, close on the heels of Japan, actually, you got Czech Republic, South Korea closing in fast, and you got Slovakia, I would say, and then you got Poland and Belgium. Now, what's missing from this chart, which I find very interesting, but then this is the 2024 chart, is China. And I suspect that the 2025 chart, when we come back to it this time in 2026 probably, will look a little bit different, because I think that China is actually going to come up very quickly, very fast onto this list and start to speed up it rapidly. Perhaps alarmingly, you would say. But I think that China will figure very, very soon on that. But for now, these are the countries, and for now, Germany still rules when it comes to our favorite cars on the road. And where are all of these cars? So where in the country will you find most of these cars? Well, again, maybe probably not surprising. The southeast has the most number of cars at 6.1 million. And then you have the northwest at, northwest would be about 4 million, just over 4 million. And then you've got the southwest at 3.6 million. That's closely followed actually by the east with just under 3.6 million, I would say. And then you've got London in itself. So London actually is not that big, but in the southeast, it's probably the most dominant. It's 2.8 million, it's 5.1%. That's how that is. I think that's car ownership percentage. And then what have you got after that? You've got around the same. You've got Scotland actually. That's also at 2 point. It's just fractionally less than that. So that's how that breaks down. You can see that. Interestingly, London has fewer cars overall, but it leads the charge when it comes to electrification, which I suppose is not really a surprise. There's 5.1% of vehicles there are, or here I should say, in London, are battery electric. And you can contrast that with, say, for example, Northern Ireland, where it's only 0.6% are EVs. And this also, of course, highlights a situation where the infrastructure, because in urban areas you tend to have a better charging infrastructure, and when you go outside of the ring roads of these cities, then you tend to find less facilities or less ease of charging. So people out there will tend to stick to internal combustion engines, where people in cities will go, well, actually, A, I can find chargers, B, if I can charge at home, it makes it easier, but C, also having electric cars in congested areas also improves the quality of air. Breathing air, I should say, in those areas as well. So that certainly helps. So I think that also has a lot to do with it. Plus, it's about things like lifestyle. And if you live in cities, you drive less, so range anxiety and that sort of stuff may not be an issue. Plus, of course, EVs actually operate better in traffic, because on the regen they recoup a lot of charge. So what you tend to find is driving in traffic, your range on an EV actually increases, whereas if you do longer journeys on fast A roads and B roads and motorways, then you'll tend to deplete that charge much quicker. So I think that's how it works. Looking ahead, how is this likely? I think this is going to continue, this sort of trend of urban areas with more and more plug-in hybrids and EVs growing in the areas, and then pushing probably the used population of cars out into the more outside of the urban zones. So I think that's going to continue, but you never know, because it depends. Because if the charging infrastructure catches up, then things could take off very quickly outside of the cities as well. And plus there's the tech on the cars as well, because the battery tech is just improving constantly. Like every few months, the batteries are getting better, they're getting more efficient, they're getting safer, they're getting quicker to charge, they have a longer range. Solid state batteries are rumored for 2026, maybe 2027 at the latest, and most people agree they're going to be a game changer, because they will be safer, but they'll also have longer ranges and much quicker charging. And then of course there's the used EV market, because the used EVs, they depreciate much more, as everybody knows, but then that also makes them very attractive to second-hand buyers. So people outside of the cities are going, oh, I need a cheap car. Actually, that EV might be something that I could look at. And then of course you're looking at alternative fuels that are coming along, biofuels, e-fuels stuff like that, that could also help and keep that interest in, for example, hybrid cars and plug-in hybrids. And as we also now know, that I think hybrids are going to have a little bit more of a leeway when it comes to the 2030 cutoff deadline for sale of internal combustion engine cars, because previously, I think what they said, I've done another video on this, but the way I interpreted it before is they said some hybrids would be allowed to continue after 2030, and the thinking was that was probably going to be plug-ins, but now it seems to be a bit more ambiguous, so I'm thinking that there's more hybrids that are going to be allowed to continue. So the reality is, at the end of the day, you know, you need to think about what car suits your lifestyle and your pocket, of course. What fits your lifestyle? What fits your needs? What do you need the car for? How far do you go? Where do you live? Can you charge it? Do you have to fuel it? And you know, you should continue to buy the car that's right for you. That's what I say. And for some people that will be an EV, and for other people that will be petrol, and for some it will still be a diesel. Let's be honest. Right. So to wrap up, what does this all mean? You know, we're still a nation that clings to old motors. That much is clear, and I think we seem to be clinging to them ever more than we used to. We love super minis, we love petrol cars, and we love diesels if we're businesses. But unfortunately, we also still love very dull paint colors, which is a shame. The EV tide is coming, but it's not a surge, it's more of a trickle. So it's happening. It's definitely happening, and more and more people are making that switch or trying it out tentatively. And it's just the fact that the quality of cars are getting better, which is actually luring more people. And this is what I've always said. It's like, you know, we shouldn't be forced into EVs, but we should want them because they're just better. If they are better, that is. If they are better for you and for your lifestyle, then you will make that switch. It's a normal thing to do. So tell me, what do you think of these? Tell me what your situation is. How old is your car? What fuel do you use? And what color is your car? Tell me that as well. Drop your answers in the comments below. In the meantime, stay tuned for more industry analysis and looking at the markets and looking at all of this stuff. This is the stuff that I always try and bring you as much as I can. Not only the facts and the information, but also a little bit of analysis and opinion as well. Anyway, on your way out, make sure that you hit like, share, and subscribe. And I'll catch you all in the next video. Shout out time, guys. Thank you so much. Hey, if you enjoy my content, why not get involved? Buy me a coffee. You can do that at either of these links. Or if you're watching on YouTube, buy me a thanks or take out a membership. It all helps. It really does.